I'd been spending the week at this particular location, keeping a low profile and working to sort out the mess Mrs. Aldridge had created. Things were moving in the right direction, but it was taking longer than I'd hoped. I'd been sitting in the conference room sorting through resumes and reviewing feedback from the HR team when the door opened without warning. My grandmother walked in, all 5 feet of her, with that thin frame that belied her infinite strength. She'd been the backbone of our family's company for decades, building it alongside my grandfather, and while she deferred to me now in the day-to-day operations, she was still actively involved. Since my grandfather's death, she'd rallied, throwing herself back into the business with the kind of quiet determination that made her both deeply respected and occasionally feared. She walked straight up to me, kissed my forehead, and took the seat beside me.
Why have you been holed up here all week, sweetheart? I thought you had other locations to visit.
I'm trying to sort things out, I said, not hiding my frustration. This place has some real issues, and Mrs. Aldridge was just the start. I've been talking to people, trying to get a sense of who could step up and lead. I paused, reflecting on the last few days. I think I've found someone.
The Ice Queen was long overdue for a change. That woman was never fit for management. Now, what else do you think this place needs?
We spent a while discussing other changes that could improve morale. My grandmother had plenty of ideas. She wanted flexible work schedules. She suggested implementing flexible work hours to help employees balance their personal lives, especially for those with kids.
You're running a company, not a military camp. People work better when they're not chained to a desk from 9 to 5.
She felt we need recognition programs. She wanted to see more acknowledgement of hard work. A monthly award, public recognition, or even a simple thank you note could go a long way.
Your grandfather and I used to know every single employee by name. It's not about the award, it's about being seen.
She also thought we needed an open-door policy, encouraging a more open culture where employees felt safe to voice their concerns without fear of retribution.
If they're scared to talk, then you're doing it wrong. People should never dread coming to work.
We were deep in conversation when a soft knock interrupted us. I looked up and there was Elaine, standing hesitantly in the doorway, holding something in her hands. My grandmother fell silent, her gaze sharpening with interest as Elaine stepped inside.
I just wanted to return this to you.
Elaine said, holding up the neatly cleaned, folded, and pressed handkerchief I'd given her in the stairwell when I'd found her crying. I took it from her, feeling the crispness of the fabric, now scented faintly of tropical lemon. Thank you.
Thank you.
She retorted, her tone layered with meaning I couldn't quite grasp. She turned and left the room, the soft scent of citrus lingering behind her. I glanced over at my grandmother, and to my surprise, she was blinking back tears. "What's wrong?" I asked, alarmed. She looked at me, her eyes glistening.
You loaned her your handkerchief. Did your grandfather ever tell you how we met?
I shook my head. No, he never did. She took a deep breath, her voice thick with nostalgia.
I was at a family function, a dinner party. Your grandfather was a friend of my brother's, and he was there too. My father was a harsh man, and he'd said something biting that made me cry. I stepped outside, embarrassed, and your grandfather followed. He didn't say a word, just pulled a handkerchief out of his pocket and handed it to me. I laughed through my tears and said, "My hero." And he was. For 55 years, he was my hero. That's why he gave you those handkerchiefs every year, Dick. It all started with a simple act of kindness. I don't think you ever knew that.
I was stunned. I'd never heard this story before, never known why my grandfather had insisted on those handkerchiefs all those years. My grandmother reached over, gently taking my chin in her hand, forcing me to look at her.
If you don't ask that girl out, I'll do it for you.
I laughed, shaking my head. I don't have time to date, Grandma.
Make time.
She insisted, her voice firm. She gestured to the office around us.
All this? It's inconsequential. Love and family are the only things that truly matter in the grand scheme of things. Don't forget that.
I didn't ask Elaine out, not then at least. But a few weeks later, at our next big family party, there she was, looking as surprised as I felt. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my heart skipping a beat. Elaine stumbled over her words, glancing nervously around the room.
Your grandmother invited me.
Of course she did. My grandmother had plans for everyone, it seemed. And maybe, just maybe, it was time I started making some of my own.